Hello and welcome to His Purpose Prevails. My name is Pam. The name of this podcast comes from the Bible verse Proverbs 19:21 that states, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." The reason I chose this name is because of my many life experiences and the many hats that I wear. This podcast is an integration of all parts of me. I am a Christian, I am Hmong, I am a woman, I am a mental health therapist, a wife, a daughter, and so much more. The topics that I speak on will be related to these different parts of me and may be relatable to you as well. I invite you to join me as I and other speakers share our experiences, offer wisdom, messages of hope, or just a different perspective. I found that it does not matter what hat I wear, what I do, what hardship comes my way, the Lord can use it to give my life purpose. And in the end, it is His purpose that prevails. Let's get into the podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to His Purpose Prevails. Today, I have on another special guest. The reason why my guest is so special is because she's my niece. So we're related. Her mom is my first cousin from my dad's side. So I'm really excited to have her. Ever since I moved back to central Wisconsin, I've been able to see that side of the family more often. And for those of you who don't know, Cassandra was actually with me for a few months and she was the main person editing my podcast videos. So she was with me for, I think, 2.5 seasons or even more. And so I am so thankful and grateful to have her on this side of things. And today we're going to talk about art therapy. We're going to talk about art. So thank you so much, Cassandra, for being on. And why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you, Pam, so much for having me on the podcast. It's so fun and interesting to be on this side of the podcast. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here, and it's been really cool to see the growth of your podcast from like the beginning until now. So thank you for having me on. As Pam mentioned, I'm her niece. I'm from Wausau, have always been, born and raised here in central Wisconsin. I'm the middle child. Let's see. I went to UW Stevens Point and got my bachelor's degree in sociology, so I'm very passionate about like social justice and just the study of like human behavior patterns in society and things like that. That's like one of my like special interests that I feel like I could talk a lot about too. And that also relates a lot to what I'll talk about later with like my journey with art and expressing myself through art. But yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else you think I should mention?
No, thank you so much for always being encouraging and so supportive of the podcast. We'll just jump right in. And so I use art with my clients. Not every client wants to use art as a way or a form of therapy. I'm not like art therapy certified per se, but we can use it as an intervention. One of the populations or groups that I find art can be really helpful with is actually those who are grieving, and I think that's kind of where I started my own healing journey. And so, for those of you who don't know, I lost my first sibling in 2015. And it was really hard to get out of that depression. I was grieving and I couldn't talk to my family because they were going through the same thing. Right. And so it was hard to talk with them without getting triggered or more emotional. But I was like, I want to do something. I just want to do something. Like, I feel like things need to come out of me, but I don't know how to get them out. And so I actually signed up for an art class at the CVA. I think it's Center for Visual Arts here in Wausau. And she actually had me use sponges, and I've never used sponges before, but I didn't use any paintbrushes. It was all sponges. And I don't even know all the verbiage or lingo for art, but I painted like a plate sitting on a table with like a wine bottle in the back. And I don't want to say painted because I used a sponge, but there was something very healing and therapeutic about that. I think it was like the tactile, like being able to tap with a sponge. And I'm an intellectualizer, so that's one of my defense or coping mechanisms is that instead of feeling, I'm always in my head and I'm trying to figure things out and work them out through my head in my head. But I was very emotionally and mentally exhausted because of my brother's passing. So I think that was really healing for me. And so then I kind of incorporated that in my own practice and I took an art therapy class with somebody who was certified so that I could bring it into my practice. But I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I kind of want to hear, Cassandra, like, what's your experience been with art? And I think when people hear art, they think of painting, and that's not necessarily all expressions of art. So I'd love to hear kind of how art has helped you and what you do.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to say I think it's great that you did a class, an art class at the CVA, because I recently did an art class at the CVA and I had a great time. So
Oh, cool.
anybody here is in the central Wisconsin area, I would highly recommend it because they have like free or affordable art classes, and it's a really great time to express yourself and get access to like art resources if you don't have them at home. So I think that's a really good resource that you utilized when you really needed it during your grieving process.
Yeah.
But for me, I have always been into like music and like fashion design. Like when I was really, really little, I was really passionate about like wanting to be a fashion designer, and I always wanted to be a drummer, like playing the drum set in a band. So I would say like those were my first two like real artistic passions when I was really young.
That's so
Um,
cool.
yeah, like I was obsessed with like Project Runway. I still have like a binder of like all of my old drawings, like clothes that I would draw and design from when I was a kid. Then, yeah, I was always really passionate about like wanting to play the drums, and that inspired me to join band when I was in middle school. And I played percussion or like the drums all the way from like sixth grade up until like junior year of college. So music has always been a big like artistic or like creative passion of mine. I would say like my creative passions really died down more probably like in like middle school. Like when I was like a young kid, like in elementary school, that's when I really like had dreams of like being a fashion designer and like a drummer. But then like as I got older, those dreams kind of faded. And I never really considered myself a really like artistic or creative person growing up like in middle school or high school or like college, because I felt like, oh, if I didn't take art classes, then I'm not an artist, you know? Because we're ingrained to think that we can only be an artist if we like take those classes or get like a degree in art or something like that. So I felt pretty detached from my creative side, like especially throughout college. Like even though I did play in band from like sixth grade until junior year of college, it wasn't, I don't feel like I was like expressing myself creatively with the music because it was like we had like sheet music that we would have to read and play exactly how it was written. So I didn't feel like I was like actually expressing myself.
Okay.
Yeah. So I felt pretty detached from my creative side, like middle school, high school, college, and especially in college, like anybody who's been to college knows like it's very mentally draining, very exhausting, and can do a lot of harm to your mental health because it's just you're like a full-time college student handling like full-time homework, and then on top of that like working, and on top of that like trying to figure out what you want to do with your life, and like maybe going through like family things or navigating friendships and other relationships. So like college was a really difficult time for me, and I did focus a lot on my studies and like doing well in my classes. But like as I mentioned, I majored in sociology and I also minored in international studies, which meant I took a lot of like political science classes, history classes, geography classes. Those subjects are all very not super creative, or at least the way that I took those courses in college, they weren't very creative. And so a lot of times like our homework or like the writing we would do, it was just strictly academic writing. So after I graduated, so I graduated in May of 2022, I was extremely burnt out. I had no desire to get a full-time job because like my mental health was like so bad. And all I really wanted to do was just like heal and just focus on figuring out what I actually wanted to do. So after I graduated, I was very lucky and I got to live with my sister for over a year, and I just worked like a part-time job, and then I really just took that time to heal my mental health and figure out who I was. And during that time is when I found art and expressing myself creatively. because I had like tried journaling. Like I've always heard that journaling is good for you for like expressing yourself and like if you are trying to like, improve your mental health, journaling can be good for you. But I would do journaling and it just wasn't cutting it for me. I guess like in college really beat the creativity out of me. And so I
Mhm.
only knew how to write like academically. I didn't know how to write in a way that like could actually express myself artistically or creatively. So that's why when I would journal, it wasn't really like helping me because I felt like I was like still like like ingrained in me. It was like I was trying to write essays or something. So it wasn't
Sure.
yeah, so it journaling just wasn't really doing it for me or like improving my mental health in the way that I wanted it to. But then I was thinking about it and I was like, well, like I am like a really strong writer. I wouldn't necessarily say like I'm great at like visual arts or like at the time I didn't feel strong or comfortable in the visual arts like pursuing painting or drawing or anything like that. But
Hmm.
I felt like since I had a strong background in writing, I was like, well, why don't I try writing poetry? Because that's still writing, but it's more like creative. And so
Hmm.
poetry was the first creative outlet that like I really dived into as an adult on my mental health healing journey. And that like really opened my eyes to what writing could be like. And I found so much healing through writing poetry. And it's something that I still do to this day. But yeah, I would say poetry was like the first creative outlet that I had that really helped my mental health. And I think that's because, like, for me, what's healing with writing poetry is like it's a way to express myself and express my feelings and it's a very emotionally intense process, so it's not like
Hmm.
super casual for me. Like I have to like really like sit down and like focus, and usually I'm only inspired to write poetry if I have some intense feelings that I really need to process. So
Okay.
it's hard for me to just like write poetry on a whim. And so during that time when I was like on my healing journey, I had a lot of things on my mind that I really needed to process. So poetry was like just my way of like letting those thoughts and feelings flow out of me. And what's healing about writing poetry for me is that like it's the actual process of writing poetry that I find healing. For example,
Hmm.
like trying to find the exact right words and language to use to describe how I'm feeling, like that's healing to me because I'm like, okay, like am I like what's the most specific and accurate word that I can use? And then I'll like go on the online thesaurus and look up like
Hmm.
synonyms or words and try to figure out like okay like what's the exact word that I'm feeling, like what will best convey how I'm feeling. And that process is like healing for me because it helps me like organize or like make sense of what I'm feeling. And similarly, like the process of trying to find the exact like metaphors or imagery or similes or analogies to describe how
Hmm.
I'm feeling, that is also like part of the healing process for me too. Because the truth is, like, some things really can't just be explained objectively or concretely. Like, like how they say, like in the Hmong language, like the language is so poetic, and like there's some things that like only make sense if you say it like poetically, or like you can't really translate it because it's so poetic. Like that's
Hmm.
how I feel about writing poetry and expressing myself is like there's so many of my feelings that can only be expressed poetically.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing and including us in some of the way instead of the process, right, that you go through. I love the distinction of being creative and of art because I often talk about painting, which is a visual art, but you're talking about artistic expression that can be in the form of poetry, it can be in the form of music, it can be in the form of dance, right? And so art, it's just an umbrella term that we're going to use and it can encompass all of that. I would say that art is therapeutic. For you, it was the words. I think for me, because I'm an intellectualizer and I often talk through and out my issues, there are times where I need to be quiet, and there are things that can only be said through art. So, for example, I had a client and she had a recent death in her life. And the only way that, and at first when I brought up art therapy, she was kind of like, isn't art for kids? And I'm not an artist and that judging, right? And so sometimes when I do art therapy, we have different norms. Like you can't judge yourself and there's there's a list of things, but she really enjoyed watching sunsets with her loved one, and that was one of her loved one's favorite things to do. And so she didn't even know what to paint, and it was a little uncomfortable. We did finger painting, and she was able to paint a sunset, and she was able to describe what the meaning of that was. And it was very therapeutic. I think it was very cathartic for her to be able to get that out and not have the words to describe it, but be able to create something with it, right? And so, yeah, same for me. For me, art is so calming because I'm always in my head and I don't want to be in my head. I want to be present and I want to be using my five senses, like my sight and touch, right? And being able to do that. So, yeah, I appreciate it. I've heard one of your poems, which is so empowering, and you get all of the feels with it. I think that's so powerful and amazing. But yeah, share a little bit more. Like, what have you been doing lately? What
Yeah.
kind of art?
So I want to respond to what you said, Pam, about like how
Yes.
you're an intellectualizer. Like I am also an intellectualizer too. And like for me, when I was diving into like my poetry journey and stuff, like poetry really helped me because I felt like I had so many emotions and thoughts that were suppressed that I just needed them like expressed in writing, like through language. And so I definitely agree with you on that. Like being an intellectualizer kind of like manifests differently in us what we need. But then, as I mentioned, like poetry is a very emotionally intense process for me. And as an intellectualizer, you're right. We also need to like be quiet and like take a step back and like stop, just kind of stop our brains from like thinking and just start doing. Like that's been a challenge for me too, but it was really important for me to like get out of my head and just like start doing things in order to like improve my mental health more. So that's also then I fell into like making collages and zines because like poetry is a very emotionally intense process for me and it's not hands-on for me. I'm only like typing poetry like on my phone or my laptop. Sometimes I write like with like by hand, but mostly it's just like on my phone. And I still really needed like a physical creative release or like a creative outlet that was physical that I could use with my hands. And so that's why making collages and zines was really helpful for me because it's much less of like an emotionally intense process and it gets my hands moving and it's very like it's a lot more casual. It's a lot less overthinking because with poetry it's a lot of overthinking. I'm trying to like figure out what words and metaphors to use and like make it like as perfect as possible. But with collaging and making zines, that's when I really learned the life lesson of like it's okay to be imperfect and like that's okay. Like you don't have to be good at making art to do art. You just have to do art. You just have to make and create art. Like that's where the real value of art is. And so that's like the big lesson that I felt I learned from creating collages and zines. And so, yeah, now those are like my three main creative outlets is like poetry and then making collages and zines, and they each serve different purposes. They're both like they're all beneficial in their own ways. And so yeah, but those are my three main creative outlets.
Okay, you have to tell me what a zine is, because that's a term I'm not familiar with.
Okay, let's see. Or maybe I'll just do this. Okay, this works. So this is a zine. It's like a little mini booklet. It's spelled Zine, kind of like a magazine. But the difference between a zine and a magazine is that these are self-published. They're usually really short, handmade, and yeah, they're just like little booklets. And what I love about zines is there's literally no rules. So it could be anything. But yeah,
That's so cool.
this is a zine called Bandao Hmong Storycloth by a Hmong artist named Paderjong. So yeah.
Very cute. Okay. Yes, you touched on so many perfect points because art isn't meant to be perfect. I think people all have different expressions. And if we think about kids, art, it's so cute, right? Like they color the elephant blue or purple, and the sky is orange or green, and it's where they say the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I think every artist has their own expression, and there are people who are willing to pay for kids art because it's just that cute, and it's just kids don't have, they don't think about being perfect, they don't have, they're not caught up in all of the thoughts of what this should look like. And I remember for me coloring was stressful because I wanted to color inside the lines, and it had to be perfect, and it had to have the same darkness, and just, and so for me, like, some art I think can be really stressful for people who are perfectionists because they think it has to be a certain way. But I love watching Bob Ross, and I love when he talks about happy mistakes or happy little mistakes, because there have been times where I have made mistakes, but it turned out, it actually made the artwork a lot better.
And isn't that a great metaphor for life too? You know,
Yes.
like that's what's been so healing for me with art is like the life lessons that I learn through art that I wouldn't have been able to learn if I wasn't engaging in art. Like that's like I mentioned, like imperfectionism, like embracing imperfection. That's a big life lesson that I learned through making art that I don't think I would have been able to learn like if I wasn't making art. So
Yeah.
it's just like I feel like it's easy for us in society and like in this culture to think that like art has to be perfect and that art is only valuable if it is perfect, or like you're only a valid artist if you got a degree in art, or if you make a living off of your art, or if your job title has something to do with art. And
Mm-hmm.
we really have to like work to like deconstruct those ideas because like it's more liberating when you understand that like art is just being a human expressing yourself, and like you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to be perfect, you don't have to have a degree in it. Like for me, like the true value of art lies in the creation process, not in
Mm.
the external validation that, other people give my art or anything like that. And I feel like it's really easy for us to get caught up in like, oh, if somebody else doesn't like it, or if it doesn't meet somebody else's like expectations, then it's not valid. Or if I'm not making a living
Mhm.
off of it, then I must be a failure. And it always makes me really sad to hear artists who say that because it's like, while yes, we do need to make a living, it's like I wish people understood that just because you don't make a living off of your art doesn't mean you're a bad artist. Like you're always going to be a good artist if you are just expressing yourself authentically. So,
Yeah. Thank you for that reminder. I think that's such a great reminder. Yeah, we're all artists. And, you came in, we had our holiday party kind of for His Purpose Prevails. And your project or your activity for us to do was to make a collage, right? And some people might call it a vision board, just depending on what you're doing. And
mhm.
for me, that was so therapeutic. And we actually spent hours on it. It wasn't like a 30-45 minute activity. Like we were talking while we were doing it. We had the scissors and the construction paper, the magazines, and the glue sticks and glue. And the last time I did something like that was during COVID with my kids because I was just trying to find activities to do. And I think one reason why I don't do art as much is because I feel like I need the time. I don't have the time. It's not just about sitting, but it's about like the creative process, like you were saying, getting all of the supplies, being able to make a mess and be comfortable with there being shards of paper everywhere and construction. And so I really appreciate you taking the stress out of it because you had the supplies, we were working, and then we all kind of worked to clean up. And I think we have to be more intentional about doing art. And we will always make time for other things, or we will always find a reason why we can't do it. So I really want us to be able to do it. And vision boards are just so, like, they're uplifting because they give you something to look forward to. And for the one I did, like, I had a theme, like it was turtles and it was blues and greens and aquas and teals, and that just made me really happy. And then I put it up in my room because every time I look at it, it makes me happy.
Yeah, I was so happy to bring my collaging stuff at the holiday party, and I'm so glad that you enjoyed it because like, I mean, I love doing arts and crafts with my friends, and you're right, we do need to be more intentional about making time for art, but also just like, because like for me, when I socialize, like I don't drink alcohol, for example. So
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to catch me at a bar socializing or something like that. So I really love bringing my art supplies like whenever I hang out with friends because it's just a good way to socialize too. And so it's like, see, that's another example of like where the true value of art lies is in the experience. It's not in the final product. Like that is one of the biggest lessons that I've learned through art is it's all about the experience and the process that went into making the art, where like all the memories happened, the people that you were with, the, I don't know, maybe like any sort of revelations that you had during your creation process or like reflections about your life. Like that, I feel like is where the real value of art lies, not in the final product. Because when you're just looking at the final product, like if someone were just to look at the final product of your collage or your vision board with the turtles and stuff, they
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't know, they wouldn't be able to see the great time that we had together or like the great conversation we had making the
Yes.
art. So that's why I also think it's important to like put more value on the process of making the art because it's all about the experience and like the final product of the artwork doesn't really show or capture what the process actually was like.
Right. Yeah, I just remember it being so calming for us. And we had no idea. I mean, I'm gonna speak for myself. I had no idea what I was going to create, but in flipping through, you find one piece and you find another and another picture and another word, and it just comes together and you start mapping out where you want it, and then you create something, right? But yeah, the conversations I think that day were very rich, and I think we were in a place where it was just super calming. So that experience was very, very great. So thank you again for that.
Yeah, and as you said, like you didn't really have an idea of what you were going to make going into it, but you just kind of, went with it in the process and you found what you wanted to do. And that's another one of the biggest life lessons that I've learned through art is that it finds itself in the creation process. And
Mhm.
I think that's something that we can apply to like every aspect of our lives because I feel like
Right.
there's so much social pressure for us to like know exactly what we want to do with our lives, have like a 5 or 10 year plan and like follow it exactly. And if we don't, we're a failure or it's like it's so black and white. It's like if we have goals, we either achieve them or we don't. So we're either a failure or we succeed. And it's so black and white. And there's no room for like change or growth or like yeah, I don't know. So I just feel like that's one of the biggest lessons about life that I've learned through creating art is that the art finds itself in the process. And like for me, as I'm living my life, I'm finding myself in the process of creating my life.
Yes. Yes, and I think it's a lifelong because with art you can take things away and add things or cover things up or start again, start a new sheet. So, yeah, there's so many amazing metaphors that can illustrate our life. Something you and I have in common though is makeup. And I wanted to talk with you about like when did you realize you had an artistic side? Because me growing up in elementary, yes, we took art class. I never stood out. There's two projects that I think stood out. One of them was we were doing wood carving. And so we got like a block, I think it was like 2 by 2 or 4 by 4 piece of wood. And then we got a picture and then we would carve and then it was gonna be a stamp, right? And so we would carve what we wanted and then we would turn it around and it was a stamp. And that was very therapeutic for me, very calming, and I was very proud of my work at the end. And then also, I don't know if it was the same class or a different class, but I actually was like art student of the month based on something that I created, and that was mind blowing because I didn't think I was good at art. So, and I think what we did was we found a picture in a magazine and we had to draw it, but then we had to make like the grid on it so we could have you done the grid art where you like draw lines over, yeah, so that you can, I don't know the word, so that you can put it on a piece of paper. They do that with like the chalk art too, if you've ever gone to the chalk.
Oh, right. Is that like so you can make sure you get the proportions correct and things?
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think that was what I got the award for. And then I do makeup too, which is really therapeutic for me. I was an artist at Mac Makeup. I worked there for some time and things like that. So I feel like art's kind of been a part of my life, but maybe I never had the permission to do it until it was like a job, right? Or an assignment. So I think all of us have a creative side, but when did you notice that you had an artistic side?
That's a really interesting question, and I think my answer is kind of similar to yours. Like, I don't think I have one specific moment where I realized I had a creative side. It just manifested differently in different stages of my life. So, for example, like when I was really little, like in elementary school, and I would like design clothes because I wanted to be a fashion designer. Like I was always drawing and stuff like that. I don't think I like consciously knew that like I was artistic or creative. I was just doing it because I wasn't like seeking validation because I was a kid, you know? So I was just, so I don't think I consciously was thinking about like, oh, like, am I creative enough or anything like that? So yeah, I think like in that phase of my life, like I was just doing it. I don't know if I realized I was like being creative or artistic. I mean, I knew I was being creative and artistic, but like, yeah, I was just doing it. I wasn't seeking like validation or anything for it. It just felt natural. And then, but as I got older, I like grew out of that. And then being in band from like sixth grade up until like junior year of college, I didn't, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, like I didn't feel like I was expressing myself creatively through that because my goal was always to like play the music perfectly. So
Oh.
I didn't feel like there was like room for creativity or anything, but I would say like one of my proudest moments in band was when we did our state solo and ensemble competition my senior year
Hmm.
of college, and I played like a solo marimba piece, which is kind of like a xylophone, because
Hmm.
I practiced that for like over a year, and I felt really proud of that. But as I'm thinking about it now, I'm like, I don't feel like it was super creative though, because like my goal was to play it perfectly, and I played it perfectly, but I didn't feel like it was like creative self-expression, or at the time it wasn't creative self-expression. Because I'm not trying to say like if you're playing music perfectly, you're not expressing yourself creatively, because you definitely can. Like
Yes.
you can channel the emotions of the music that you're playing like through yourself and things like that. But I'm just like speaking for me, like when I was in school playing music, I wasn't doing that. So for me, it wasn't like creative expression, but it did bring a lot of value because it was like I was still like using my hands still and like doing like
Yeah.
hands-on expression, like the physical expression. So there
Hmm.
is where I feel like the value was. But as an adult, I would say like I didn't realize I had a creative side until after I graduated college, like falling into poetry and making collages and zines. That's when I really started to like consciously embrace that like I do have a creative side.
Okay. So yeah, that was a follow-up question was going to be what is one of your proudest works of art? And so you talked about that piece, but is there another one that you're more proud of that you did recently or that sticks with you?
Let's see. Let me just look at my Instagram feed.
Yeah, take your time. While you look at that, I'll tell you mine.
Yeah.
So I worked at MAC Cosmetics and we had face charts that people could flip through. So it would just be a bare face on a piece of paper and you would fill in the brows and the eyeshadow and the eyeliner and the cheeks and the nose and the lips, and then there would be lines and it would say lip liner and we would tell you, what lip liner the we had on the face chart, and that would inspire people or show people different looks. And there was actually a picture of Jennifer Lopez, and she's usually bronze skin, very beautiful, but she had like a no makeup look. And I did the shading and in her nose contour, and the face chart actually looked like her. And so on top of the face chart was the actual magazine photo that I was replicating. And I got a lot of compliments on that, but I worked so hard on that. Like I was tedious with that and I really worked hard and it was really enjoyable. So I would say that's one of the, I wish I still had it. Maybe I do, but or maybe the store
Oh,
kept it, but that
mhm.
was something I was really proud of.
Nice. Let's see. I don't know. I feel like proud of everything.
Good. That's great.
Let's see. What kind of proud would you like to learn about? Like any, I don't know, what more specific questions do you have for me?
So tell me about one that really made it really tapped into your creative side and maybe you didn't know you had, or maybe you didn't know that that was something you could do, that was possible.
Ooh, okay.
Maybe it was new, maybe it was a risk, something you were trying for the first time.
Ooh, okay. That's a very good question. Ooh. Okay, this isn't an actual piece of artwork,
Okay.
but like I've led a couple art workshops, and that is something I've never ever envisioned for myself before. Like when I started my creative journey, like after
Hmm.
college, just trying to heal, all I thought was like, oh, I'm just gonna like write some poetry and make collages. I never had any idea that I would possibly be like leading workshops for people to like do artwork and make collages and things like that. So
Wow.
my first proudest like workshop that I ever did was actually at the Racial Justice Summit in Madison back in September.
Hmm.
And I did a workshop about like I did a collage workshop, and the title of it was called If You Can Imagine It, It's Possible: Lessons from
Mm.
Art That We Can Apply to Social Justice Practices. And
Yes.
it was basically just like we all made collages, but I had some like guided discussion. Like I had some questions in mind about some certain topics relating to like social justice and art. And so
Hmm.
it was just like a really casual, open discussion. And like I really like having us do collages or like artwork at the same time because it's like the behavioral activation also gets people's brain juices moving too and helps inspire conversation as well. So, yeah, that was an experience that I am still very proud of because I'm like, I never envisioned myself doing things like this. I'm not an expert, but it's like we don't need to have degrees in art or like,
Right.
make a living off of art to be considered like an authority figure in art or anything. Like any
Yes.
any human is an artist, and any human who makes art has credibility to be able to teach and share the wisdom of like making art.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is so good. I wanted to share a little bit about my painting experience. So I had shared kind of when my first brother passed away and I did the sponge art. But then when my second brother passed away, I was like, let's do this again. Let's get back into art. And I had a little flat canvas and I think it was like 4 by 6 probably. And I was just thinking of him and painting whatever came to mind. It was very abstract. I think I showed you, I still have it, but when after I did it, it felt very calming. But when I came back to look at it, I was like, why did I choose those colors? I was just getting curious about it. And my brother and I, his family actually had us go over to his house to do a photo shoot. And it was a beautiful summer day. The sky was blue. We took pictures in his house and in his yard. And when I was painting, some of the colors that I was using was light blue. I was using kind of like an olive green, some green. I used some black, some white, and some yellow. And I really like the painting, but when I look back, what he was wearing for that photo shoot, he had a light blue shirt on with a yellow tie. And we were taking a picture in the grass by his house. And so I think that kind of was just me like pulling in the colors of that day and kind of how it felt. And so I'm actually really proud of that piece of work just because I don't know. It's very meaningful to me. And so when we were doing the collage, I really appreciate you because I was like, "Oh, Cassandra, let me tell you what this means to me." It was kind of like another show and tell. But
Mhm.
I think being able to tell you like this is why I chose this and this is why I chose this and this is what this means to me makes it so much more personable, right? So, yeah, I wanted to share that too.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. It kind of sounds like maybe you were like tapping into your subconscious, kind of like when you made the art and you weren't even like aware of it at the time until after you reflected on why you chose those colors.
Yes, absolutely. That's what happened.
Yeah, it's like when you're talking about like how meaningful it is to share like the artwork that you created and why you chose certain things and like how it relates to your memories or like your emotions. Like that I feel like, that's where the value of art therapy is because it's like
Mm-hmm.
you may not have been able to talk about how important that photo shoot was to you had you not made that artwork. Like if you were just sitting in a room talking to your therapist, like it might not have been as easy or like on your mind to talk about how meaningful that photo shoot was. But because you made art and like express yourself through the medium of like that painting, you were able to, show how significant that photo shoot was for you.
Yes. And when we did the photo shoot, we knew that he had a terminal illness. And so we kind of knew that this would be the last way we would capture our memory together on camera. And so there was a lot of feelings that came with that. But I just remember that being a very pleasant day for me. And so, yeah, there are a lot of things attached to that that I probably wouldn't bring up in therapy.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Art is a great way to just express yourself and talk about your feelings. Like, yeah, do you find it easier with your clients is it like easier for them to talk about like certain emotions through art that they might not be able to talk about as much if they weren't doing art therapy with you?
Yeah, when we do art, we don't talk about emotions, but I'm never one to translate, even though I have my own interpretation of the art. It's always so I just ask open-ended questions and we just get really curious. And sometimes they don't know and sometimes they do. And it's something that they can take home with them or it's something that they can leave with me. But with this person, this who was working on losing their loved one, I think they did at least three. And every time the artwork it evolved and it was just so interesting because it was a sunset and they were really expressing their pain because I would even see how far they were from that person in the artwork, like they would paint themselves and then they would paint the person and you could see even like how big the person was or how close it was to an object. I was able to interpret those things myself, but those were some of the questions like why did you choose that color? Or what do you think that means having this person behind you instead of in front of you? Or, what is the meaning of the cloud or the sun? And so, yeah, it can be very therapeutic. And maybe it's not necessarily about emotions, but it's about some of their thoughts, right? In the process of that. So, and then I think the last photo was about the healing and how the world continued to move and they kind of felt stuck in time and they were able to show themselves just on a cliff, disconnected from the world, and below there were so many people, and it was just the day-to-day grind, right? Everybody doing the same thing, and no one's life changed except this client. So, yeah, there are so many amazing things that can be expressed through art, but sometimes it's not feelings, it's just more of how things are for them in the moment.
And it's not like there's any pressure for them to be like a perfect artist either, too. Like it's really all about the self-expression. Like that's where the real
Mhm.
value of the making art is in making the art, not about being perfect, not about having like perfect structure or technique or anything like that, but
Yes.
it's simply about self-expression.
Yeah, and this client painted with her fingers and it was stick figures.
Yeah.
And there was nothing but just the process of what color am I going to choose and how am I going to express this and show this. And yeah, very powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, so another question I have for you is what advice or tips would you have for someone wanting to get in touch with their artistic or creative side? I feel like this is a little redundant because you've given us so much already, but I'm wondering if there's something else that you have on your mind.
Just do it. Like, don't overthink it. Don't think about it. Just like, oh, start small. Like, because for me, I can easily put a lot of pressure on myself and be like, I need to do this big, huge artistic project. But it's like, no, you can just start small. Like, start by doodling in your journal. Like, simply just doodle in your journal or something like that. Like, that counts. That counts as expressing yourself creatively. And that is still very impactful and it's very significant. So just start casually, start small, and just do it. Like, don't overthink it. Just start doing it. you don't ever have to finish anything. You're not obligated to commit to finishing any projects or anything like that too, because I feel like that's another thing that like that's an idea that's daunting to me is thinking about like, okay, if I start something, I have to finish it. And it's like, who said that? Like, who said
Mhm.
you have to finish it? But I could like I understand like kind of where the root of that idea comes from because it's like in society in our culture it's like they tell us that you have to once you start something you have to commit and if you don't commit and you don't succeed or like you don't finish it then you're a failure. And so it's very
Yes.
easy for us to internalize those things in every aspect of our lives. But like with art, there is no rules. You don't have to commit to anything. You can leave a project unfinished. You can leave it imperfect. You can leave it incomplete, and it's fine. As long as you got what you needed out of it, which was just creating for that moment. Maybe that's all you needed, you know, as long as you got what you needed out of making the art, then it's okay to finish it and not touch it or not want to complete it. But yeah, I would say like start small, it's okay to be imperfect. You don't have to overthink it. Just do it. Like don't think about it too much. And it's okay not to finish a project. Yeah.
That is so good. So just do it. It's okay to not finish it. And the art is doing something for you. It's not the other way around, right? Like
Right.
you have to do something for the art or for other people. This is your tool, your
Right.
outlet. Yeah. I really like what you said earlier about journaling, how you were just in college, so you were used to, writing academic essays with proper grammar, but you found poetry and you were able to express yourself through that. And that's what I tell my clients too about journaling. Journaling isn't for everyone, but it should work for you. It is a tool for you. And so there shouldn't be any parameters, any rules around it. Like if you don't use correct grammar, if you don't use periods and making things capital letters, it needs to work for you. I have clients, sometimes they just cuss and they cuss and it's just the pressure of the cuss word on the paper, right? Some people they write something and then they tear it. Some people they write everything down. So there's so many ways we can utilize it. Some people they talk into their phone and they take notes that way. So journaling can look like anything for everyone. Some people they want to type it out. I would say if you have Microsoft Word or something like that, or on your Google Drive doc, you can password protect your Microsoft Word, so sometimes people worry about privacy. So there's so many different ways you can do it. Some people do bullet journaling, some people like stickers. It should be fun and it should be something that serves you.
Exactly. Like I've recently started journaling more and a lot of my journal entries is just me scribbling and like not even writing actual words. And I think that's like valid too. Like, because maybe we have a preconceived notion that like journaling is just writing down words, but that's like a message that I would want to share to other people is like journaling doesn't just have to be writing words. You can just like doodle or scribble or something because sometimes scribbling like a really messy picture with like a lot of pressure and just like, you know, letting my hand like do the movements to get the feelings out, like that says more than words can say. So you can just like doodle, scribble, draw some shapes, do whatever you need to just let your emotions out. Like you don't necessarily need to let your emotions out through words.
Right. Yeah, I remember when I was doing my training as a victim advocate, and I think it was End of Use that hosted like this week-long training or a few days training. And while the speaker was talking, they actually gave us coloring sheets and coloring pencils. And I found that I could listen calmly so much more better because the coloring actually grounded me. And so some people think you're not paying attention when you're coloring. You totally are because I was coloring to ground me, but I was listening, fully listening. And if I needed to take notes, I could. And so I do that too in therapy. I have a coloring book and I have colored pencils. And if a person is talking about something difficult, if at any time they want to color, they are welcome to color in our therapy session. It's not something that I'm against or I think it's a distraction. So for me, I find that coloring while I'm listening to a lecture actually helps me to retain the information a lot better.
I love that you brought up grounding because, yeah, that's a really, really good word to use. I feel like if we're not doing something that's grounding us while we're doing, something that we have to pay attention to, then it's easy for our minds to like float away or not be in the present moment. So like doing something physical, just like with our hands or just like with doodling or drawing, like that does really help to ground us in the present moment.
Yes. Yes. All right. Any final words or tips for our guests? I know a lot of guests like to know about self-care. So if you want to throw out any self-care activities that could be helpful for people too while they're on their healing journey, any last words, anything would be appreciated.
Let's see, for self-care, I mean, what really helps me is like talking to my friends. Like every time I talk to my friends, I just feel like a beam of light shining out of my chest. I'm like, wow, like life is beautiful, life is great, friendship is magic. Like that grounds me a lot and it fills my cup a lot. So I would say
Hmm.
like definitely like lean on your loved ones for support and yeah, like you're not alone. It's okay to like ask for help for others or just like ask people to hang out. Don't feel like a burden for asking people to hang out. I would just say, like, if you're wanting to get into your art journey, but maybe you don't feel like you have time, like, let's say you work like a 9 to 5 job, just like doodle at your desk or something, for a little bit.
Mm.
Because I get it, it is stressful to have to carve out like hours in your day that you may not have to do artwork. So, wherever you can fit it in, just do it, just try it. And you don't have to commit to anything. Like you don't have to commit to like doing art like every single day or doing it like once a week. Just like do it when you can and you're not like a failure for not being consistent with it or anything either. Yeah. Cuz I'm not, at least for me, like my goal isn't to be like a formally trained artist or something like that. So that's why I'm giving this kind of advice. Like I guess if you were trying to be a formally trained artist, then you would want to be consistent in like building your skills and everything. But for
Mhm.
me, I'm just trying to express my emotions, and that's all my goal really is. So, yeah, just don't beat yourself up about anything and don't put too much pressure on yourself. There's no rules. If you feel like there are rules or if you feel like there's pressure to adhere to like certain rules or something, maybe reflect on like who is telling you that there's rules, you know? Yeah.
That's so good. Thank you so much, Cassandra. I would say something that I find intimidating is like digital art, but I like doing paint by numbers. I like doing diamond art. So those are kits that you can buy at Michael's and other places. I don't know if Walmart has them, but just different things you can do that are pre-made for you. So you just have to do it. Like Cassandra said earlier, just do it. And I also think the warmer weather is coming, and so another self-care tip would be just to be out with nature. When we're in the home, when we're connected to devices and the internet and social media, that can make us really stressed. Just having a computer and having a screen in front of us all the time. And sometimes we just need to go connect with nature. I just imagine sitting on a beach and having the waves roll in, and I'm just drawing in the sand. That could be a form of art. Or, if there's still snow, just building a snowman. My daughter and I actually, we built a snow woman, and our neighbor was like, "Oh, great job on the snowman." And I was like, "Nope, it's a snow woman," and it had curves and it looked like a snow woman. And so, yeah, there are so many things we can do with art that doesn't need to be just paper and colored pencils or crayons. And then for those who, you might not want a full notebook, but you can always Google like coloring sheets, and my daughter, she'll print off, different like Sanrio characters like Hello Kitty or Pochako or Keroppi, and they'll just color. And one of my daughters, she likes the really simple coloring sheets where there's not a lot of intricacies and small detail. Like she just wants to be able to color it quickly. And so there's so many tips out there for you, whether you're just starting art, you're intermediate, or even if you're advanced. Feel free to leave comments below on what kind of art things you're doing or some of your creative outlets as well.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned building a snowman because that reminds me of like another just really important life lesson that I've learned through art too is like art is life. Like art is the life experiences that you create for yourself. There's this Bruce Lee quote that I really like. It says, "I have always been a martial artist by choice, an actor by profession, but above all, I am actualizing myself to be an artist of life. Yeah, I just think like we could all, internalize that more. Just thinking of ourselves as like artists of life, like the art that we are creating is our life experiences, like creating snowmen or like I baked cookies this morning. Like that's like creating life experiences.
It
So
is.
it's just, the life experiences that we're creating, that's the art of life, and we are all artists of life.
Yes, absolutely. Awesome. Hey, maybe we can collaborate and we could do like a vision board or we can do something with some of the people here in town. I think just to get them to be doing art too, that could be really cool.
Yes, I have all the art supplies ready, so yeah.
Yay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Cassandra, for taking your time out of this Monday morning to be with me. Hopefully we can do more things in the future, but I'm really excited for the guests to hear about art and how you've used it in your life. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you, Pam, for having me on the podcast. It's been an honor talking with you, and I can't believe the hour went by so fast already.
I know it did go by. We can talk forever. All
Yeah.
right. Well, take care.